On October 3, 2025, several probes orbiting Mars are directing their lenses toward an entity that defies all logic. This entity is expelling 150 kilon of gas each second, yet shows no backward push. Imagine observing a firearm discharging absent any jolt. Such a breach of basic principles led experts, upon initial review of the readings, to suspect faulty equipment. The gear functioned perfectly, however. Avi Lobo from Harvard assigned it a score of 6 on his 10-point scale for extraterrestrial tech. Yet your interest lies elsewhere. 2 days prior, an individual purporting ties to the European Space Agency posted on 4chan a disclosure that was precise, in-depth, and laced with irritation. The post outlined an official team effort that repeatedly failed to classify this entity within standard categories of celestial formations. As quoted, "This position is no longer tenable, and the silence from leadership on the cognitive dissonance this requires is becoming a serious professional issue." It highlighted chemical reactions deemed impossible. Nickel tetracarbonyl, an artificial compound used in industry, emanating from a supposed ancient rock aged billions of years. Particles of dust so peculiar that a full week of instrument adjustments passed before accepting the readings as genuine. Plus, an issue with its mass, 33 billion tons squeezed into 3 kilometers. The probabilities are so improbable that our galactic simulations must err by 10,000 times, or this isn't mere wreckage. What escalates the concern, in 26 days it vanishes behind the sun, concealed ideally from all terrestrial scopes. Upon its December return, we can check for any path alteration. Should it have veered, no natural process accounts for it. One hypothesis, reminiscent of speculative fiction, yet accounting for each oddity, emerges. The emission lacking propulsion, the artificial composition, the heat-defying norms, an entity driven by its core mechanism, not solar energy, but by remnants of the Big Bang. And this idea lends itself to verification. 2 forecasts, each refutable, slated for the coming 3 months. This marks 3 Atlas, merely the 3rd extrasolar body we've identified, and the initial instance prompting experts to doubt if it's truly a comet or merely masquerading as one. Through this account, you'll grasp why certain investigators now struggle with rest, why its path appears engineered, why the schedule feels impeccably timed, and the implications should the evidence persist in resisting alignment as barriers weaken and the chamber's contours emerge. Should you be prepared, tap the approval icon and join the channel for events unfold live. Share below your location, local hour, and the strangest incident you've encountered. Chapter 1, The Mars Moment. An event unfolds at this instant, not on the morrow, not within a far-off vision involving ideal scopes or targeted missions, precisely now, this day. October 3, 2025. Precisely then, our species deploys various probes encircling Mars. Each strives to image one specific target. Known as 3 Atlas, it stands as the 3rd verified wanderer from beyond our system. At 4 Universal Time today, it skimmed 29 million kilometers from Mars. That proximity represents its nearest brush with any world across its solar passage. The schedule proves pivotal. Allow me to clarify the reason. Over the preceding 3 months, researchers monitored this target via ground telescopes. Hubble imaged it. The James Webb Space Telescope probed its molecular makeup. Scores of global facilities followed its path. Yet a flaw undermines every such record. Separation. During Hubble's capture of 3 Atlas on July 21st, the comet sat 446 million kilometers distant. That equates to about 3 times the span. The vast expanse separating our planet from the Sun poses inherent limits, where even the Hubble telescope's exceptional lenses struggle to discern fine particulars. Yet, a shift occurred recently. Orbiting Mars, the reconnaissance spacecraft, fitted with its HiRISE instrument, positions itself 20-fold nearer to 3I Atlas compared to Hubble's vantage during prior scrutiny. That factor of 20 yields a profound leap in clarity. Whereas Hubble discerned merely a hazy form amid swirling particles, HiRISE promises to capture intricacies at scales of 30 kilometers per pixel. Should this entity match the dimensions posited by certain analysis 5 kilometers across or greater, we might glimpse its form, contours, perhaps even textual traits on its exterior. Involvement extends to the European Space Agency as well. A pair of probes, Mars Express alongside the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, now direct their sensors at the intruder. Aboard Mars Express resides the high-resolution stereo camera, while ExoMars features the color and stereo surface imaging system. Intended originally for mapping Mars's terrain, these tools seize a rare chance to target an outlier in the cosmic flow. Beyond imaging lie the analyzers of spectra. Mars Express deploys Omega and SpyCam, with the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter utilizing Nomad. Far from mere snapshots, these devices dissect illumination. In essence, they parse the rays bounced back or radiated from the target across spectral bands. Such insights uncover composition, identifying gases afloat, gauging thermal states, and clarifying if the observed vigor stems from vaporizing frost or an alternative mechanism. Expectations run high that these probes will clarify core uncertainties. What precise scale defines the core? Does it spin? At what pace, if any? How precisely does the enveloping haze appear in proximity? Above all, does this represent merely an outsized wanderer acting erratically, or does it harbor traits alien to its class? Herein lies the crux of intrigue. Relying solely on luminosity, upon 3I Atlas's initial spotting last July, experts gauged its span at potentially 20 kilometers, subsequent refinements from the Vera C. Rubin Observatory trimmed that to 10 kilometers. Late July views from Hubble hinted at roughly 6 kilometers. Certain simulations factoring in albedo variations propose it might shrink to just 440 meter. Such variance spans enormity from 20 kilometers to scarcely 5 kilometers. Envision the gap, akin to a modest metropolis versus a towering edifice. The resolution carries weight. Should 3I Atlas measure 5 kilometers or beyond, it would eclipse all prior interstellar finders by magnitudes in bulk. The inaugural outsider, Oumuamua, clocked around 100 meters wide, resembling a flattened disk cartwheeling across the void. The follow-up, 2I Borisov, spanned perhaps 600 meters, resembling a standard icy drifter, yet 5 kilometers equates to 33 billion tons, a scale not merely immense, but defying odds. Consider the backdrop. Prevailing theories on interstellar ejecta's origins predict that diminutive scraps should dominate numerically over behemoths. Per each colossal boulder hurled from afar, multitudes, tens of thousands of grit-like shards ought to proliferate, potentially hundreds of thousands more. Likelihoods favor spotting the tiny first, given their abundance. Nevertheless, reality unfolds otherwise. Thus far, 3 such visitors logged. The latest looms potentially 1,000-fold to 1,000,000-fold heftier than the Pioneer. This inversion challenges assumptions. Perhaps frameworks falter. Maybe the cosmos teems not sparsely with such flotsam, but overflows. Or ejection dynamics from stellar realms diverge sharply from preconceptions, or this visitor defies categorization as refuse altogether. Probing from Mars aims to probe that riddle. A sharp depiction from high-rise unveiling a 5-kilometer heart would affirm mass projections. At 33 billion tons, the baseline solidifies, rendering the improbability inescapable. If an image reveals an entity no bigger than a kilometer, the enigma alters dramatically, as a compact core exhibiting that luminosity and emission implies unprecedented vigor, expelling vastly more substance than any documented comet so far from the Sun. Either scenario reveals inconsistencies. The aggravating aspect is the delay in clarity. Information must travel to our planet, undergo scrutiny, validation, and verification. Officials from the European Space Agency have indicated no dramatic visuals from Mars Express or ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter. These probes aim downward toward the Martian surface, not outward to the void. At a distance of 30 million kilometers, 3I Atlas registers as under 1 pixel in their sensors. They could detect the surrounding gas envelope, perhaps a trace of the extension, yet not the central body. Hyas represents the primary prospect, though the schedule remains vague. It might take days or weeks for refined visuals to surface. Meanwhile, the entity continues its path. By mid-October, 3I Atlas draws near enough to the Sun that terrestrial viewing becomes impossible. Solar brilliance will obscure it entirely. It attains perihelion, its nearest solar approach, on October 29th at 1.4 astronomical units, barely within Mars's path. Throughout that span from mid-October to month's close, the object positions itself sunward opposite Earth, concealed and beyond reach. That interval spans 26 days, almost a full month. Upon its return in early December, emerging into the dawn hours, observers can resume sightings, verify its course, assess its radiance, and determine if it acted like a typical comet near perihelion or if anomalies arose. Returning to October 3rd and the Mars encounter proves revealing. While the primary account centers on settling the scale debate, another dimension emerges. This facet involves not just potential imagery, but revelations from existing records. Here, discrepancies intensify. Chapter 2 explores the 7 violations of natural norms. Avibe released a piece on October 3rd, coinciding precisely with the Mars pass. He outlined what he terms the 7 irregularities of 3I Atlas. These aren't mere uncertainties or oddities, but true deviations from the expected interstellar comet profile. He grouped them into 2 sets. The initial group encompasses 4 irregularities, possibly resolvable or mitigated by enhanced details. The latter group holds 3 that, per his view, endure as enigmas indefinitely, stemming not from data gaps, but from likelihoods, paths, and schedules, hinting at design beyond coincidence. Begin with the initial group, the potentially resolvable ones. Irregularity 1. Scale. This has been noted already. The span of 3I Atlas seems to exceed 5 kilometers, yielding a baseline mass of 33 billion tons. This renders it 1,000 to 1,000,000 times heavier than the prior 2 interstellar visitors. Resolution depends on whether upcoming views, such as the Mars pass today, uphold or adjust that figure. Should the core prove diminutive, the issue eases. If validated at 5 kilometers or more, the improbability grows stark. Irregularity 2. The stream. Hubble captures display a strange trait, an elongated spray of diffused light stretching 10 times its breadth, aimed straight at the Sun. Typical comets exhibit extensions flowing sunward, propelled by solar gusts and light force. Yet this stream diverges. It aligns contrarily. The proposed rationale is that 3I Atlas undergoes intense emission on its solar-facing aspect, ejecting matter that scatters light prior to reversal. That's reasonable enough. But the snag persists. The jet manifested prematurely at ranges where typical comets linger inactive, sustaining an exceptional luminosity and endurance. A faint tail emerged only toward the end of August, following the object's substantial advance toward the Sun. Such procrastination strikes as peculiar, implying that the processes of gas release deviate from standard comet patterns. Anomaly 3 concerns the elemental makeup, marking a point of true peculiarity. Analyses via spectroscopy from the James Webb Space Telescope and the Very Large Telescope indicated that the surrounding gas cloud of 3I Atlas harbors considerably more nickel relative to iron. In ordinary comets and the prior interstellar visitor, 2I Borisov, these elements maintain proportions akin to solar abundances. Fairly even yet, 3I Atlas exhibits a stark prevalence of nickel. Detection of nickel occurred across all monitoring periods. Iron surfaced solely when the body drew nearer than 64 astronomical units to the Sun. Even so, the nickel-to-iron proportion stayed markedly elevated beyond norms. The significance arises because both nickel and iron qualify as refractory metals, resistant to transitioning from solid to vapor under the frigid conditions prevalent on comets. The exterior chill of 3I Atlas, despite proximity to the Sun, proves insufficient to vaporize pure nickel outright. Alternative factors must be at play, perhaps a precursor compound embedding nickel that decomposes to liberate the atoms or an atypical mode of thermal activation. Regardless, the enigma persists. Further intrigue lies in the gaseous blend itself. Conventional comets brim with water. Nearing the Sun triggers sublimation of water ice, overwhelming the spectral signature, whereas 3I Atlas overflows with carbon dioxide. Its carbon dioxide to water proportion reaches 8.1, ranking among the most extreme detections to date. This points to origins in an intensely frigid locale, chillier than the zones birthing usual solar system comets. Anomaly 4 involves polarization, a specialized yet crucial aspect. Reflected light from dust grains acquires polarization, with its intensity and orientation revealing details on particle dimensions, forms, and surfaces. All examined comets and asteroids conform to a defined, foreseeable spectrum. 3I Atlas defies this. The polarization readings deviated so profoundly from projections that scientists first suspected instrumental flaws. Subsequent verifications yielded identical outcomes. Accounting for the figures demands dust particles of a wholly distinct nature, not ordinary silicate grains, nor water ice fragments, but rather elaborate, expansive entities riddled with voids, resembling wispy smoke in configuration. Admittedly, these four oddities unsettle, though they need not dismantle the comet theory outright. Enhanced observations could resolve the dimensions. The jet might represent an uncommon yet innate imbalance in gas emission. The nickel surplus could stem from some unidentified rare compound. The dust might result from atypical genesis circumstances, awkward yet potentially resolvable. Shifting to the next tier brings enduring riddles. Anomaly 5 addresses orbital orientation. The path of 3I Atlas hugs the ecliptic plane within 5. This plane forms the planar realm of planetary revolutions around the Sun. Interstellar wanderers from haphazard galactic vectors ought to display varied tilts, steep, gentle, or even backward. The odds of such precise conformity to the planetary alignment occurring randomly stand at roughly 0. 2 or 1 in 500. Improbable, though not precluded uncommon occurrences arise, yet it signals initial caution. Anomaly 6 tackles entry chronology, plunging the likelihood into steep decline. 3I Atlas not only entered on a course mirroring planetary layout, but timed its passage for proximate brushes with Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. In particular, the body will skim past Mars today, October. It might have approached Venus requiring just slight trajectory tweaks back in July, and it's aligned for a fairly near encounter with Jupiter, come March 2026. The odds of some interstellar visitor stumbling onto a path and timing that permits these kinds of meetings hover around 0. EOF or roughly 1 chance in 20,000. Pause to consider that. When crafting a spacecraft meant to tour various worlds within a star system, engineers aim for a route that crosses their orbital routes. They synchronize the launch to match the target's locations. They cut down on propellant use for any path refinements. This mirrors precisely the approach taken in our own space endeavors. Voyager and New Horizons fine-tune their paths, leveraging gravity slingshots. 3 Atlas seems as if it arrived by intent. Chapter 3 delves into the physics that defy explanation. Just 2 days prior, a shift occurred. On October 1st, 2025, an unidentified message surfaced on 4chan, not within a scholarly discussion space or an academic archive, but on 4chan's paranormal section, a corner more famed for online myths than credible astronomical exchange. Yet this proved no myth. The individual asserted being a doctoral-level scientist collaborating with the European Space Agency. They described maintaining current entry to the merged observations on 3I Atlas, belonging to an official team striving to decipher this entity, and noted that the team had come up short. For months, I've joined an official team that has attempted without success to align this entity's actions with any recognized category of ordinary cosmic form. The stated stance holds that 3 Atlas represents a distinctly vigorous yet fundamentally ordinary comet. That stance holds no water anymore, and the quiet from those in charge regarding the mental strain this demands is turning into a major career concern for an increasing share of our ranks. To clarify, posts from unknowns on 4chan lack the scrutiny of peer review. They remain unconfirmed. They might amount to clever storytelling, pretend scenarios, or perhaps a reader of the studies choosing to spark wild theories. What sets this apart, though, lies in its depth of specifics. The irritation conveyed rings true, and the assertions match public records in a way that's eerily precise while layering in insights absent from any sanctioned announcement. Thus, I'll outline the content from this source, treating it not as proven truth, but as a glimpse into potential backstage tensions when experts confront uncooperative observations. The message starts with the ejection of materials. 3 Atlas expels roughly 150 kilos of vapor and particles each second. This stands as observable fact, not guesswork. The James Webb Space Telescope captured it. Instruments at the Very Large Telescope verified it. The body is losing substance profusely. Carbon dioxide, water, ice, dust particles, all streaming out relentlessly with force. And, per this scientist, it yields zero outcome. It seems like a data error until you've verified it dozens upon dozens of times using every tool at hand. The body expels about 150 kilos of vapor and particles every second. We detect it, but it produces no effect. It's akin to witnessing a cannon launch a projectile without the slightest kickback, haze, or report. A steady, fierce occurrence lacking any fallout. And that shreds the fundamentals of physics in a revolting way. Allow me to detail the issue. As a comet ejects vapor, it gains propulsion. Newton's third law dictates it. Each force meets an equivalent counterforce. The vapor streams off the exterior. The comet pushes back. The push is small, sure, but it accumulates detectably. This yields what stargazers term non-gravitational acceleration, a minor shift from a strict gravity-driven course. Every vigorous comet exhibits this. Halley's Comet, Comet Hale-Bopp, 2I Borisov, the prior interstellar arrival. Each showed detectable non-gravitational acceleration while releasing materials close to the Sun. 3 Atlas displays scarcely any. A study released in September, penned by Richard Chloe Avibe and researchers under Peter V., scrutinized 4,022 precise positional measurements gathered from 227 global observatories during the period from May through September. With remarkable accuracy, they determined the path of the celestial body. Next, they examined potential irregularities, including residuals, seeking evidence that emissions might be altering its direction. Over several months of monitoring, the maximum deviation detected amounted to just 0.028 arcsec. This translates to a non-gravitational force below 15 mm per day squared. Given that the entity is expelling 150 kg, such a minimal effect seems utterly negligible, bordering on non-existent. As the forum contributor explained, the physical principles align solely if the body possesses substantially greater mass than initial assessments suggest. In their words, the only way the physics works is if the object has the mass of a small moon crammed into a space no more than 2 to 3 kilometers across. Projections from baseline simulations establish a minimum of 33 billion tons, introducing an even graver complication. Encountering a mountain-scale interloper on an extrasolar path defies probabilistic expectations entirely. Consider the implications. Should 3I Atlas boast sufficient heft to counteract the thrust from releasing 150 kilos, its composition demands extraordinary compactness, denser by far than frozen water, surpassing stone, nearing the compactness of metal like iron. A sphere 3 kilometers in diameter made of pure nickel-iron alloy would approximate that weight. Yet this cannot qualify as a barren metal relic. It displays a hazy envelope and elongated trail. It behaves like a classic comet in its emissions. Thus, the substantial bulk must exist, yet coexist with surface layers of easily vaporized ices. The contributor pressed on, stating, "Our surveys have only just started. To find an object this massive this soon means the galaxy isn't just dotted with debris, it's swarming with them. The models are wrong by a factor of 10,000. Our entire picture of what gets ejected from solar systems is fundamentally grotesquely flawed. All this object isn't debris at all." Such a subdued yet alarming inference is precisely the topic authorities urge us to avoid. Take a moment, absorb its weight. Assuming the mass calculation holds true at 33 billion tons or beyond, predictive frameworks collapse, since sizable wanderers from other stars ought to prove scarce, dwindling exponentially with increasing scale. Each boulder the size of a peak should accompany countless dust grains, yet among the 3 interstellar visitors identified to date, one compact disk-like form, another standard icy wanderer, and this latest behemoth 1,000-fold heavier, the pattern defies logic. The progression runs backward. We face either freakish fortune beyond belief or a cosmos teeming with hefty drifters far exceeding prior estimates by magnitudes that shatter our grasp of how worlds coalesce and cast off fragments into the void. Alternatively, a darker possibility emerges. This visitor defies the debris category altogether, and matters intensify. The forum entry highlights chemical inconsistencies as well. As noted, you look at what's actually in the gas, it gets worse. We're seeing pure atomic nickel steaming off. It's happening at temperatures where it should be frozen solid. This isn't gradual, like ice turning to vapor. It's a switch. The nickel production is insanely sensitive to sunlight. A tiny change in heat and it just shuts off. There's only one way you get that, a breakdown of a parent molecule. The only option is nickel tetracarbonyl, something we use in industrial refining. It explains everything, especially why there's no iron, but it's not a naturally occurring compound. What the hell is a synthetic chemical doing on a rock, which we think has been in space for billions of years? Nickel tetracarbonyl merits closer examination. This substance represents a molecular structure where nickel links to 4 carbon monoxide units. Under standard conditions, it appears as a clear fluid, lethally poisonous and prone to rapid evaporation. A scientist by the name of Ludwig Mond identified it in 1890. In manufacturing, it plays a key role in the Mond process for refining nickel. The method involves treating contaminated nickel with carbon monoxide under controlled parameters, yielding nickel tetracarbonyl. Subsequent heating. When the substance encounters heat, it decomposes, leaving behind unadulterated nickel. This material is artificially produced in laboratory settings and industrial facilities. It has no natural presence on our planet. A certain scientist claims that this very substance alone accounts for the nickel spectral signature observed in 3I Atlas, including its responsiveness to temperature shifts, intermittent activation patterns, and complete lack of iron traces. Yet, the discovery of nickel tetracarbonyl on what appears to be an ancient comet originating from a far-off protoplanetary disk billions of years ago begs the question, how could it possibly end up there? Conventional natural mechanisms cannot generate nickel tetracarbonyl. It demands precise environmental factors. Intense pressurized carbon monoxide must react with solid nickel metal. Even supposing such circumstances arose in the nascent solar system, the material remains inherently fragile. It degrades readily. Enduring eons in the void of interstellar space would be impossible for it. The sole alternative is ongoing synthesis, prompting a far more perplexing inquiry. Synthesized by what means? The account then turns to the ejected particles. As the source material puts it, the particles it's releasing are equally bizarre. We assess the way sunlight bounces from them. Their polarization reveals insights into the grain's surface characteristics. All known comets and asteroids cluster within predictable boundaries, but this object's readings deviate wildly from norms. Our lead researcher demanded we recheck our work for nearly 7 days before confirming the findings anew. Achieving such values demands grains of an utterly foreign nature, nothing like typical sand or frozen bits. Enormous, extraordinarily intricate formations, dark, spongy like wisps of soot, these defy natural particle norms. This points to an engineered substance. The composition defies expectations. The physical properties clash with theory. It forms a flawlessly unified pattern of anomalies, almost designed to erode our confidence. Engineered substance, that's the term they employed. Public records do confirm aspects of the polarization data. An article appeared last September reviewing telescopic visual data from various observatories. For 3I Atlas, the polarization level registered at -2, one under a phase angle near 90. Such negative values at that orientation are exceptionally uncommon. They indicate light oriented orthogonally to the diffusion plane, a phenomenon tied to distinctive grain traits, jagged contours, elaborate inner architectures. The study highlighted the oddity, yet refrained from deeming it unattainable. The purported source asserts that private debates delved deeper, with readings so anomalous that equipment malfunction seemed certain until fresh scans yielded identical outcomes. Should the grains prove vast, elaborate, and riddled with voids, it implies an origin process alien to standard cometary activity. Normally, comets release debris as surface ices vaporize, carrying away bits from the crust. Such debris tends to be tiny, on the micron scale, comprising straightforward silicate or carbonaceous flecks. Vast, hole-filled grains, however, mark a stark departure. As the narrative describes, it's akin to haze, suspended particulates, minutely fragmented matter boasting an immense surface-to-volume proportion. This resembles output from burning, factory operations, or the pulverization of dense solids into superfine dispersions, far from the gentle vaporization of frost over stone. The discussion proceeds to spin, or its absence. Per the text, Hubble imagery captures an improbable trait, a dim, oily streak of a tail aimed directly solarward. Apparently, a potent carbon dioxide burst erupts from the daylight hemisphere, potent enough to heave substantial water ice chunks beyond sunlight's ready deflection. A fierce, aimed thruster. Very well, yet no spin occurs. We've monitored it relentlessly over extended periods. Luminosity holds utterly steady, without the slightest percentage variation, a perfectly level trace. Such a forceful burst on a tumbling form would induce throbs, glimmers, cadences. Instead, we witness flawless, unyielding calm. The tale's rationale hinges on a fierce-oriented phenomenon. The sighting a uniform dust envelope demands flawless evenness for its illumination. Reconciliation of the two proves impossible. At least one must be fabricated. Thus, either the tail's configuration is artificial, or the envelope defies natural formation. The nuance here matters greatly. Should 3 Atlas spin while expelling a one-sided jet, observers would detect recurring shifts in luminosity as the jet swings in and out of sight, with varying nucleus sections bouncing sunlight our way. Comets typically exhibit this routine. Their luminosity profiles, those light curves, pulse irregularly. 3 Atlas shows no such variation. This investigator reports its glow as unwavering, steady, utterly level. Such uniformity points to just a pair of explanations. The body might cease all rotation, an improbability for an entity cruising cosmic voids over eons, since each impact or tidal tug adds spin, or the emissions remain steady due to isotropic venting, uniform in every direction without cease. Yet even dispersal fails to account for the leading tail. That appendage aims sunward, necessitating focused thrust and imbalance. Hence, conflicting data emerge, a tail insisting on a jet, a luminosity profile insisting on balance. Reconciliation eludes unless the encircling dust gas haze operates independently of the spin, or the body adjusts its outer processes to hold steady glow irrespective of angle. No such mechanisms arise in nature. Beyond lies the heat dilemma. As the expert notes, then there's the heat. The thing is cold. It's absorbing gwot of raw solar energy, enough to power a small city. We calculate the energy budget, and there's a massive surplus. That heat has to go somewhere. It should be driving off enormous plumes of water vapor. But the water isn't there. It's like pointing a blowtorch at an ice cube and watching it refuse to melt. The object has found a way to either dispose of or regulate an enormous thermal load to keep its surface locked at a specific low temperature. Conservation of energy stands as physics' foundational tenet. Input matches output, adjusted for any reserves. Approaching perihelion, a comet takes in solar rays. It sheds via infrared emission and sublimation's heat draw. Vaporizing ice soaks up calories. This cooling trick defines cometary survival, with phase change acting as thermal buffer. Yet, if 3I Atlas gulps gwot of sunlight without venting matching water, the surplus vanishes. Where? The specialist contends thermal computations mismatch. Excess warmth ought to spur outbursts, yet spectra reveal none. Perhaps the exterior boasts high reflectivity, albedo bouncing back much light to cut intake, though that would render it more luminous than observed. Or warmth sinks deep inside, hoarded in the core, demanding exceptional heat flow, atypical of frozen stuff. Alternatively, it escapes in untracked bands, infrared, far infrared. Or the entity somehow controls its skin's chill, a notion bordering on ridiculous, yet the observations lean that way. Lastly, consider the path. The voice continues, and that's before you even look at the path it took to get here. Its trajectory is a statistical joke. It's a perfect low angular momentum orbit, the kind that guarantees a close path. The physicists who model this stuff are blunt. There is no known natural process that filters massive objects onto these trajectories. It wasn't just a random encounter. For all intents and purposes, this thing was delivered from the darkness. We've already discussed the ecliptic alignment, the planetary encounter timing, though the probabilities. But this adds another in an outer layer characterized by minimal angular momentum. The trajectory deviates sharply from planetary alignments, proceeding at a pace far gentler than the usual rush of interstellar travelers. Ordinary visitors from beyond slice across the solar domain at velocities reaching dozens of kilometers per second. Yet Oumuamua advanced at a mere 26 kilometers in relation to the Sun. Meanwhile, 3I Atlas surges through the void at roughly 60 kilometers. Factoring in the Sun's gravitational pull, however, its nearest passage slows considerably, rendering it tame as though crafted to hover deliberately. The dispatch concludes on a note of convergence. You don't get it. None of these are separate problems. They're all symptoms of a single underlying sickness. A jet powerful enough to make the tail would make the object flicker. It doesn't. A body that massive should be dead. It isn't. The sun's heat should be boiling it alive. It feels nothing. Each paradox is a wall, and we're all standing here staring at the walls, refusing to see the shape of the room. This isn't a failure of our models. This is a glimpse of the machinery running underneath them. And it's wrong. That glimpse of the machinery running underneath lingers like a specter, implying these oddities aren't flaws but deliberate traits, that the entity functions under principles alien to our grasp. The analyst then proposes a rationale, one echoing tales of speculative fiction, yet they insist it's the sole framework aligning the evidence with physical laws. Chapter 4. The Chemical Nightmare. Consider the substances emanating from this enigma, for their composition defies mere peculiarity. Per the disclosed account, it verges on the inconceivable. The tale of nickel commences with thermal conditions. When the Very Large Telescope trained its UV spectrograph on 3I Atlas from August through September, it captured spectral signatures of nickel atoms themselves, not bound in compounds, but isolated nickel radiating across each session. The crux lies here. Nickel qualifies as a resilient metal. Its fusion threshold stands at 1455 C, while vaporization demands 2013, at the orbital range of 3I Atlas spanning 1 to 2. 1 astronomical units from the Sun, exterior heats plummet to between 150 C, nowhere near sufficient for solid nickel to evaporate into gaseous form. Still, it emerges in detectable volumes. The formal analysis in the release study proceeds with restraint. As the experts note, the presence of nickel and iron atoms in cometary coma is extremely puzzling. At the distances at which comets are observed, the temperature is far too low to vaporize silicate, sulfide, and metallic grains that contain nickel and iron atoms. They posit an originating substance, perhaps an organic variant harboring nickel, which fragments under solar rays to liberate the atoms. Yet they refrain from specifying it, since nickel rarely yields fleeting alliances in the natural world. It remains steadfast, preferring solidity. The purported source delves deeper. They specify nickel tetracarbonyl and detail its ominous implications. Nickel tetracarbonyl falls under organometallic designations, a single nickel nucleus linked to 4 carbon monoxide units. It exists as a fluid under ambient conditions, prone to evaporation. It volatilizes at 43 C and vitally reacts to light. Subject it to ultraviolet rays, the sun's plentiful output, and it unravels. The carbon monoxide segments peel away. Isolated nickel atoms result. Such a mechanism flawlessly accounts for the findings. With nickel tetracarbonyl coating the exterior, subtly heated by daylight, it starts to evaporate. The mist wafts outward. Ultraviolet particles strike. The structure collapses. Nickel atoms materialize in the readings. Moreover, since the disintegration relies on radiance rather than mere warmth, nickel generation ties intimately to sunlight exposure. Even a slight variation in proximity, a minor tilt in orientation, and the output fluctuates wildly, aligning perfectly with the VT observations. Measurements reveal a sharp surge in nickel emission as 3Tra Atlas nears the Sun, scaling to the 9th power. This indicates a pronounced, abrupt correlation. Such behavior aligns precisely with photodissociation mechanisms. Thus, the chemical profile holds up, yet a puzzle emerges. Nickel tetracarbon never arises naturally. It qualifies as artificial. Industries synthesize it through the bond process. Start with pure nickel metal, subjected to carbon monoxide under elevated pressure and mild heat, yielding nickel tetracarbon. Next, transfer to another enclosure and apply intense heat. The molecule disintegrates, leaving refined nickel behind. This method serves as a purification strategy, secured by patent in 1890. What mechanism deposits an artificial factory-made substance onto a comet from beyond our stars? Perhaps cosmic environments mimic the synthesis conditions for nickel tetracarbonyl. Protoplanetary disks abound with carbon monoxide. Should nickel metal particles exist there, alongside suitable pressure and warmth, natural creation could occur. Conceivable, yet improbable. Moreover, even if synthesized, nickel tetracarbonyl proves fragile. It breaks apart gradually, particularly under radiative assault. A traveler enduring interstellar voids for eons, immersed in cosmic radiation, ought not retain pristine nickel tetracarbonyl externally, save through ongoing dynamic generation from within. The leaker proposes exactly that. 3 Atlas forgoes relic nickel tetracarbonyl from its birth era. Instead, it yields the stuff fresh as a side effect of internal operations. Consider now the iron or its absence. Standard comets feature nickel paired with iron. Both elements manifest in proportions mirroring solar composition. About 1 nickel per 20 iron atoms. Such stands as the universal cosmic ratio. It reflects expectations for matter born in a stellar protoplanetary disk. 3 Atlas displays overwhelming nickel prevalence. Iron signals emerged solely below 264 astronomical units distance. There, the nickel-to-iron balance still deviated vastly from norms, exceeding by a full order of magnitude. The question lingers. With both metals embedded in the comet's makeup, why does nickel vaporize readily as iron remains confined? The leaker links this to nickel tetracarbonyl. Iron lacks an equivalent fleeting partner. Iron pentacarbonyl does exist, though far more prone to decay and harder to assemble in parallel scenarios. Should venting favor nickel tetracarbon output, nickel emerges solo, sans iron. The reactions prove discerning. Still, this demands deliberate activity, beyond mere frost evaporation hauling dust specks. A refined chemical operation at play. Shift attention to the particulates, for polarization readings unveil the real oddity. Sunlight bouncing from dust grains acquires polarization. Intensity and orientation hinge on grain dimensions, forms, and makeup. Scientists wield this for analysis, gauge the polarization, match against simulations, deduce the dust nature. All examined comets and asteroids cluster in expected patterns. Silicate grains, frozen bits, carbonaceous flecks all yield comparable polarization traces. Minor differences abound, yet stay confined. 3I Atlas defies all limits. Public records indicate -2, 1% polarization at 90 phase angle. Such negative values in that setup prove exceedingly uncommon. They demand grains of wild irregularity or intricate inner architectures. The leaked account recounts the initial data arrival. Our director accused us of errors throughout nearly a week before we confirmed the finding. They scrutinized gear, realigned settings, watched a new identical outcome. According to the Post, the figures can only make sense if the dust particles differ at their core. These aren't ordinary specks, nor the sort produced as sublimating ice hoists fragments of stone from a comet's exterior. Consider the cited description. Large, incredibly complex particles, black and porous as smoke. Ponder the implications. Standard comet particles measure mere microns, spanning just a handful of micrometers, and consist of basic granules. Yet, such expansive, elaborate formations point to another origin: clusters. Airy assemblies brimming with voids, boasting vast surface expanses yet minimal mass, akin to carbon residue or fine suspensions. This is the variety emerging from burning reactions or vapor-based synthesis. Methods that assemble atoms progressively, stacking strata to yield elaborate designs, unlike the casual occurrences on an icy boulder. Moreover, their darkness. Ordinary comet particles tend to gleam somewhat. They bounce back considerable solar rays. That's what renders comets detectable. Dark particles, however, soak up illumination. They manage heat adeptly. They intensify in warmth swiftly. Should the particles encircling 3I Atlas prove dark and riddled with pores, they would capture sunlight, intensify thermally, and emit in the infrared spectrum. This circles us to the heat dilemma once more. Precisely where does that captured power vanish? The Post positions the odd chemistry within a broader scheme. As quoted, the chemistry is wrong. The physics is wrong. It's a flawlessly unified realm of errors, seemingly designed to erode our confidence. Unified in flaws, that's the crucial notion. Any single oddity might get dismissed individually. Peculiar, yet feasible. Yet collectively, they weave a framework, a unified vista, merely one clashing with the idea of a standard comet. Imagine inspecting a device where each component deviates subtly from norms, yet the device operates smoothly. You begin questioning whether the norms err or if the device adheres to alternate criteria. To clarify, the prevailing expert view, embraced by the majority of stargazers, deems 3I Atlas a comet, a peculiar one indeed, featuring traits that stretch prior observations, yet inherently organic and interpretable via solar system principles. NASA has affirmed this outright. Tom Statler, NASA's principal expert on minor solar system entities, informed journalists, "It looks like a comet. It does comet things. It very, very strongly resembles in just about every way the comets that we know." And he speaks truly. 3I Atlas displays a coma. It trails a tail. It vents gases nearing the sun. Such actions define comets. Still, the specifics, the composition, the particles, the heat equilibrium harbor the uncertainties. The Insider's Post avoids declarations of proof. It doesn't assert this as assuredly extraterrestrial or contrived. Its message proves more straightforward and oddly more unsettling. As quoted, "For months I've been part of a formal working group that has tried and failed to reconcile this object's behavior with any known class of natural celestial body." Failed. Not merely ongoing efforts, not simply awaiting further observations. Failed. That's their chosen term. Should this disclosure hold authenticity, mirroring authentic deliberations in the European Space Agency's working group, then experts scrutinizing this evidence quietly concede a lack of resolution, prompting an inquiry. If conventional accounts falter, what alternative prevails? Here, the Post veers toward domains evoking advanced theory or speculative tales based on one's tolerance. Chapter 5. The rotation that doesn't exist. All celestial bodies spin. Inevitability reigns. Impacts confer rotation. Tidal forces infuse rotational energy. Even the mildest stellar brush. Eons past propel entities whirling across emptiness. Spinning defines the norm. Thus, upon spotting a fresh comet or asteroid, observers prioritize one initial. Astronomers prioritize determining the spin duration of celestial bodies. What is its rotational speed? They monitor luminosity variations across intervals. During rotation, various surface regions confront the viewer: shadowed areas, luminous patches, uneven contours. Luminosity shifts occur, at times faintly, at others intensely. yet it always varies. Such patterns form what is known as a light curve. Graphing luminosity against duration yields a repeating oscillation. The cycle length indicates the spin velocity. The peak height reveals the extent of surface unevenness. This ranks among the fundamental assessments in observational astronomy. Yet 3 Atlas lacks any such signature. The disclosed document reveals ongoing surveillance of the entity. Hubble scrutinized it, Webb examined it. Terrestrial telescopes followed it relentlessly through successive nights, yet luminosity remained unchanging. As stated, we've gazed at it relentlessly for extended periods. Its luminosity shows no alteration, not even a tiny fraction of a percent. It forms a perfectly level trace, utterly level, no deviation, no glimmer, no recurring indication. That's incorrect. Beyond mere oddity, it's erroneous. A flawlessly round body, should it possess any facial markings, any disparity in albedo, any zones dimmer or brighter than the norm, would exhibit luminosity shifts during its spin. Comets, moreover, never achieve perfect roundness. They appear jagged, bumpy, pocked. Ejective streams from outgassing generate luminous areas. Particle buildup forms shadowed regions. Spinning ought to produce a cadence, yet 3 Atlas exhibits no glimmer. Consider, however, a circumstance where rotation evades detection. Should the entity turn exceedingly leisurely, with cycles spanning weeks or months, observations within constrained spans might miss a complete revolution. Even so, one anticipates incremental luminosity adjustments as the body gradually pivots, a gradual shift, a pattern, any indication. The document portrays the luminosity as steadfast, fixed, immobile. Thus, either 3 Atlas ceases all rotation, an outcome physically untenable for a Voyager enduring billions of years in the void, or it spins while luminosity defies rotational influence, demanding some rationale. Complexity arises here. Both Hubble and Webb detected a trait, an anterior extension, a spray of matter directed sunward. The instinctive interpretation involves a jet, a confined release of volatiles on the solar-facing aspect of the comet where radiant warmth peaks. Such jets prevail among comets. Vaporizing frost builds force. Vapor bursts via fissures or apertures. Particles trail in its wake, forming an oriented spray. Yet jets inherently lack symmetry. They erupt from a single site in a specific orientation. With rotation, the jet accompanies the turn. At moments, it aligns observerward, others oppositely or laterally. The degree of sunlight reflection alters. This yields a throb, a shimmer, a luminosity modulation linked to the spin cycle. 3 Atlas displays a jet-like trait, absent any luminosity shift. These findings clash irreconcilably. The document states it starkly. As quoted, a jet potent enough to form the tail would induce the entity to shimmer. It does not. The rationale for the extension demands a forceful oriented occurrence. The luminosity record necessitates an entirely even envelope. Both cannot coexist. One must be false. Either the extension's framework or the envelope's uniformity defies nature. To dissect this, should the extension stem truly from a jet, that jet ought to manifest as a recurring luminosity adjustment. Yet luminosity holds steady. Hence, either the extension arises not from a jet but another source, or luminosity separates from the jet's effects. One option, outgassing proceeds isotropically, utterly balanced, occurring uniformly across every angle ceaselessly, akin to a globe gradually dissolving. Absent jets, absent imbalance. This accounts for steady luminosity, yet fails to justify the sunward extension. Balanced outgassing yields an even envelope and an extension driven rearward by solar radiation, not a sun-directed spray. A further option involves the dust. The enveloping haze around this entity is incredibly dense, optically impenetrable, effectively erasing all fluctuations in luminosity. Perhaps the stream is erupting, yet concealed within a misty shroud. Observers detect merely the peripheral layer, presenting a seamless facade. Such an explanation might hold, though it demands an immense output of particulate matter. However, spectral analyses reveal the surrounding aura as quite sparse, lacking true optical opacity. Another hypothesis emerges. The entity could be deliberately modulating its illumination, preserving a steady albedo irrespective of spin or emissions. This notion borders on the ridiculous, yet it alone harmonizes the conflicting data without dismissing any as flawed. The source hints at layers beneath the surface. The spin anomaly forms no isolated quirk. Rather, it integrates into a broader pattern of anomalies. The identical core mechanism renders the venting thrust-free, generates artificial compounds, and ejects engineered particles. Per the disclosure, this apparatus operates from within, independent of stellar influence or ambient warmth. This leads directly to the ensuing enigma, the heat phantom. 3i Atlas captures gigawatts of sunlight. No guesswork here, it's precisely computable. Consider the silhouette's extent, factor in the irradiance at its orbital range, and derive the influx. For a body spanning 5 kilometers, positioned about 2 astronomical units from the sun, intake reaches several gigawatts, sufficient to power a modest metropolis. Such influx demands an outlet. For ordinary comets, it fuels the vaporization of frozen substances. H2O frost, CO2 frost, assorted fugitives, transitioning from solid to vapor devours vast heat. Thus, comets remain chilled. Vaporization acts as a thermal buffer. Input heat, output vapor. Yet complications arise. Ingested energy fails to align with expelled mass. The exposed document notes thermal simulations reveal imbalance. As stated, we compute the power ledger and uncover a huge excess. Such warmth must dissipate somehow. It ought to propel vast jets of H2O steam, yet the H2O is absent. The Webb Observatory assessed the vapor makeup dominated by CO2 with traces of CO. H2O exists, but in quantities far below projections. CO2 to H2O stands at 8.1, an outlier ratio. Typical comets prioritize H2O. It's the chief fugitive fueling outbursts. Yet if 3i Atlas ingests gigawatts without expelling matching H2O volumes, whither the power? A candidate, thermal emission to the void. Bodies release infrared glow. Greater heat spurs greater output. Should 3i Atlas boast strong emissivity, with a facade adept at shedding warmth, it might jettison energy cosmically sans extensive ice loss. Complications persist. Spectral readings indicate frigid surface conditions, exceptionally frigid. Much cooler than anticipated for such solar intake. From the document, the entity chills, akin to directing a flamethrower at a frost block and seeing it defy thaw. Thus, 3i Atlas ingests gigawatts, withholds H2O, and clings to cold. Power vanishes. Whence? Where? The document posits the entity employs a method to manage its heat burden. As quoted, the entity has devised a means to discard or govern a colossal heat burden, fixing its facade at a precise chill. Govern that term recurs, evoking oversight, a framework beyond inert thermodynamics, deliberate oversight. Sustaining an unnaturally low exterior demands potent chilling or an inner thermal reservoir. A feature that ingests power, hoards or converts it, sans elevating the skin's heat. What natural process achieves this? Scant options. Definitely none on a comet. The sources. In wrapping up, consider this. The gigawatts streaming from the sun amount to a minor outside factor for such a colossal 3-billion-year-old entity equipped with its internal energy generator. Like any lifeless stone, it simply dissipates that incoming solar warmth without active involvement, since sunlight plays no role in its existence. Instead, its true driver lies deep inside an autonomous mechanism producing power on its own, untouched by external heat from the star. Should this hold, the puzzle of its temperature control dissolves into mere fallout from that setup. The thing has no reliance on the sun, it remains utterly aloof toward it. This leads straight to the most unsettling inquiry imaginable. If 3i Atlas possesses this inner energy supply, precisely what fuels it? Enter Chapter 6, the cue ball idea. At this point, the disclosed document veers into realms of physics that echo wild speculation from sci-fi tales, yet the analyst insists it's the sole lens through which the observations align logically. As stated, it qualifies as a large-scale quantum entity, a durable, hefty remnant from the universe's initial microseconds post-Big Bang, a pocket embodying alternate physical rules that endured, veiled by a layer mimicking our world's norms. In cutting-edge theory, experts dub this core a non-topological soliton. Far from mere conjecture, this stands as the singular physical explanation rendering the evidence consistent. Enter the cue ball, time to unpack its implications. Right after the Big Bang, the cosmos brimmed with unimaginable intensity, scorching heats, and crammed densities far exceeding lab recreations. Under such pressures, the core interactions of nature operated in unified ways unlike now. What we know as separate bits today, electrons, quarks, photons, merged into a seething uniform soup. With expansion and chill setting in, the whole system shifted through critical changes, symmetries shattered, interactions diverged, and substances solidified into familiar patterns. Yet these shifts rarely unfold without glitches everywhere. Picture how liquid turning solid might trap air voids or isolated droplets. Similarly, the nascent cosmos could spawn flaw zones where the switchover faltered, leaving holdouts of the prior blended phase sealed away yet enduring. Such anomalies carry labels: cosmic strings, monopoles, domain walls, and cue balls. Specifically, a cue ball emerges as a non-topological soliton. Dense terminology, right? Allow a clearer breakdown. Imagine a self-perpetuating ripple, a compact energy blob that maintains form via an equilibrium spreading tendencies, clashing against binding nonlinear dynamics. The non-topological bit signals it's not anchored by spacetime's twists like a tangled loop. Rather, a preserved attribute, essentially a charge, keeps it intact. Hence, the cue for charge. Within select frameworks, especially those bolstering the standard model with supersymmetry, these cue balls arise naturally. They arise from scalar fields, zero-spin varieties carrying stored potential. When aligned just so, such fields forge a robust, weighty form, an enclave where internal values diverge from the surrounding ones. No implosion occurs thanks to the setup's inherent stability in energy terms. It sits at a valley in the broader energy map. Crucially, a cue ball powers itself. Its core field erodes at a glacial pace, unleashing output across eons. This output appears as emitted bits, waves, warmth. Over time, the cue ball sheds some bulk, though so leisurely that one born in the dawn of time might linger into our era. Admittedly, this ventures into unproven territory. Cue balls remain unseen in reality. Theories forecast them, sure, but those ideas lack verification. Many experts view them as intriguing possibilities, plausible denizens of the cosmos that likely stay fictional. But here, the source asserts 3i Atlas matches the blueprint without flaw. To trace the reasoning, supposing 3i Atlas is a cue ball, what signatures should emerge? Start with immense heft crammed into tiny space. Cue balls packed tight, their inner fields clustered densely. One spanning 3 kilometers might rival a minor satellite's weight at 33 billion tons, and that aligns spot on with the baseline estimate. The assessment stems from the absence of any non-gravitational propulsion. Next comes uniform venting in every direction. The cue ball's disintegration occurs deep within its nucleus. Power emerges evenly across all sides. This warms the encircling layer, a shell built from gathered frost and particles, starting from the center and spreading outward. That frost turns to vapor in a balanced manner. Nothing like streams, nothing like angled push. The venting achieves total equilibrium. Zero overall pushback. Such symmetry accounts for the cannon-like force without any backlash, the fierce expulsion yielding no effect. The internal breakdown mechanism generates the vapor. That vapor disperses identically outward on all fronts. Newton's third principle holds true. Equal and opposite forces neutralize each other. Then, steady luminosity. With venting spread evenly, the haze of particles and vapor enveloping the cue ball forms a round, even shell. Spinning plays no role. The body appears identical no matter the viewpoint. The glow remains unfluctuating since no uneven features spin to cause variation. Also, peculiar reactions. A cue ball's breakdown defies standard heat rules. It involves subatomic interactions, intense power, able to form odd substances. The gradual combustion unit, termed the slow burn reactor in the article, functions at a fixed, mild warmth. Yet it isn't a conventional heater. Rather, it's a quantum breakdown occurrence. Across eons numbering in the billions of years, this yields residues, intricate structures, metallic carbonyls, fabricated particles, the remnants of a long-forgotten drive. Moreover, heat neutrality. The CQ ball ignores the sun's influence. Its core power source vastly overshadows any solar warmth. The outer layer's heat level gets controlled not through taking in and emitting sunlight, but via the consistent emission from the heart. The sun's gigawatts amount to merely an insignificant outside factor. Finally, the path. If Q balls abound, forming part of dark matter, the galaxy teems with them. Far from scarce or odd occurrences scattered about, 3 Atlas isn't cast off fragments from some far-off star. It belongs to the core makeup, a leftover from the Big Bang. This clarifies discovering an object of such scale so soon. We're not observing hurled world fragments, we're witnessing dark matter in its essence. The article presents this as a breakthrough. The Q ball embodies the mass. Its drive stems from its own erosion. The missing pushback ceases to puzzle. It becomes a key trait. The venting isn't a stream. It constitutes an even erosion, a flawlessly round, balanced release of material. As the nucleus's power seethes its shell from the interior outward, no overall force arises. It travels without impact because the process unfolds within a flawlessly offset setup. And further, this isn't about faith. This stands as the sole physical framework rendering the observations consistent. Once examined, the whole array of inconsistencies aligns into a rational, chilling vista. Chilling, that's the term chosen. Not fascinating, not unexpected. Chilling. The reason? If 3 Atlas qualifies as a Q ball, dark matter isn't some unseen passive debris strewn across the void. It's dynamic, it's hefty, and it permeates everything. The galaxy doesn't hold mere scattered space stones. It buzzes with primordial colossal bodies, everyone a remnant from the Big Bang, everyone gradually eroding, everyone prone to drifting through a star system and causing what precisely? Inaction or far graver harm. Yet the vital aspect remains. The Q ball idea allows for verification. The article concludes with forecasts, precise, checkable assertions. First forecast, operations unaffected by proximity to the sun. A typical comet's actions rely on solar warmth. As it drifts farther from the sun, the operations diminish, the venting eases, the glow dims. This holds true across the board. All comets we've tracked adhere to this cycle. But should 2 Atlas possess an inner drive, its operations will defy that cycle. As it withdraws toward the solar system's fringes beyond 3 astronomical units, beyond 4, the glow and material shedding pace ought to brightness levels will persist at extraordinary intensities. Such persistence defies the thermal principles anticipated for an inert, cooling entity. This claim invites empirical verification. Observation remains feasible. Upon the entity's reappearance in December, following its transit obscured by the solar disk, extensive monitoring opportunities arise over subsequent months as it recedes into the outer reaches. Should illumination endure, should vapor release proceed without interruption, this constitutes irrefutable evidence. Celestial wanderers of cometary nature exhibit no such behavior. Another forecast involves intense radiative output. The entity's disintegration constitutes a subatomic phenomenon, an estimated 73 megawatts of power per the document's assessment. Such potency cannot simply dissipate. Instead, it generates subatomic ejecta, energetic subatomics, gamma radiation, X-radiation, yielding a non-thermal potent spectral imprint ripe for identification. As stated, direct a gamma-ray observatory toward it. Should a detection emerge unlinked to stellar breeze encounters, this rules out cometary identity. It signals the pulse of an anomaly defying established physical laws. Verification proves accessible here too. Facilities for gamma-ray scrutiny operate worldwide. Fermi stands ready. Should an energetic origin coincide with 3I Atlas's position, detection follows. Comets produce no gamma emissions from inherent mechanisms. Solely the most radical cosmic entities achieve this. Pulsars, black holes, supernova debris, or, granting the theory's validity, Q balls, permit utmost transparency on this front. Mainstream inquiry rejects such notions. Q balls dwell in the realm of conjecture, unproven. Prevailing astrophysical consensus would reject this proposition summarily. Its nature borders on the arcane. Adoption demands recognition of dark matter in an undetected configuration, alongside the primordial cosmos, forging enduring, large-scale quantum constructs. Moreover, one such construct traverses our stellar domain at present. A more straightforward account posits 3I Atlas as an aberrant comet, featuring atypical composition, peculiar particulates, perhaps a paired core or concealed architecture beyond current comprehension, yet firmly organic and accountable via standard celestial mechanics. This stance commands the allegiance of the scientific majority, potentially with justification. Yet, granting the document's authenticity, supposing a European Space Agency panel grapples with reconciling observations, then the Q ball concept circulates in discrete deliberations, not proclaimed as resolution, but as the sole recourse avoiding dismissal of substantial data. Should forecasts materialize, should 3I Atlas maintain luminosity during egress, should gamma signals register, discourse shifts abruptly. Chapter 7. The Concealed Operational Phase. In 26 days, 3I Atlas executes an action poised to unsettle observers. It vanishes from sight, not in actuality. The entity endures, advancing along its path. From terrestrial vantage, however, it eludes detection, concealed solarward, engulfed by our star's radiant veil. This unfolds on October 24th. Solar conjunction ensues for the entity. Our planet, the Sun, and 3I Atlas align linearly, the Sun intervening centrally. Thenceforth, through initial December, visibility ceases, tracking halts, positional, luminous, or compositional assessments prove impossible. Across almost 6 weeks, the entity evades scrutiny. Then, on October 29th, amid this visual void, 3I Atlas attains perihelion, its minimal solar proximity, at 0. 4 astronomical units, nestled inward from Mars's orbital path, precisely when insolation intensifies maximally, when a typical comet surges in vitality, when a fusion crests. None of this registers to our gaze. Such synchrony draws scrutiny. Avi addressed it directly in his October 3rd piece, as quoted at its perihelion on October 29, 2025, when it reaches 1. 35 astronomical units from the Sun, 3I Atlas will be totally obscured from the Earth by the Sun. If we assume this obscuration occurs within a solar elongation of 30, then it is straightforward to calculate the likelihood of this alignment with the Sun and Earth as roughly 7. 7, not inconceivable, yet far from mere coincidence. 1 in 14. And here's where it. If 3I Atlas functioned as a propelled vessel capable of steering, the perihelion phase would represent the prime opportunity for executing a reverse Oberth maneuver. Allow me to clarify this concept. The Oberth effect constitutes a fundamental concept within orbital dynamics. Upon activating a propulsion system, the resulting shift in kinetic energy hinges not solely on the force exerted, but also on the prevailing speed. Activating thrust during periods of peak velocity yields greater returns on the effort invested. The increase in kinetic energy proves substantially amplified. Such techniques are routinely employed by spacecraft. To break free from a planet's or star's gravitational pull, operators apply thrust at periapsis, the nearest point in the orbit where speeds reach their maximum. This exemplifies the classic Oberth maneuver, delivering peak performance. Conversely, a reverse Oberth maneuver inverts this approach. Traveling at high speeds along a hyperbolic path away from the system, yet desiring to remain, one seeks gravitational capture. Thus, engines ignite at perihelion during maximum velocity to decelerate. This timing maximizes the efficiency of the speed reduction. Energy dissipates, transforming the path from hyperbolic to elliptical. Rather than fleeing, the object achieves capture. Should 3I Atlas aim to linger within the solar system, October 29th would mark the critical juncture for braking, occurring concealed behind the Sun and invisible from Earth. Lowe presents this notion with precision. He avoids asserting its occurrence. Instead, he highlights the advantageous alignment. From his article, this could be intentional to avoid detailed observations from Earth-based telescopes when the object is brightest or when gadgets are sent to Earth from that hidden vantage point. The optimal point for a reverse solar Oberth maneuver to become bound to the Sun is at perihelion. It is this optimal breaking point for 3I Atlas that is obscured from our view by the Sun. Gadgets refers to compact probes dispatched from the primary body, leveraging the retrograde path and near-planetary flybys to approach Mars, Venus, or Jupiter using scant fuel. Supporting computations confirm feasibility. In Lowe's July publication alongside Adam Hibbert and Adam Cray, they computed the delta-v necessities. Delta-v denotes the velocity adjustment required for 3I Atlas to dispatch a probe toward Mars in early October. The needed delta-v falls below 5 kilometers. This aligns with capabilities of intercontinental ballistic missiles, attainable via chemical engines. Venus follows suit under 5 kilometers through July. For Jupiter, it stays below 5 kilometers until November. Reaching Earth demands more, consistently exceeding 5 kilometers, imposing a steeper energy toll, which, in a hypothetical scouting operation, could justify bypassing Earth on the first circuit, prioritize other worlds, collect intelligence, then assess Earth's value against fuel expenditure. Once more, this remains speculative. Lowe maintains it's not underway. He merely notes the path and schedule permit such possibilities. Yet the crux lies here. Certainty arrives only in December. As 3I Atlas resurfaces from solar occlusion in early December, it materializes in the pre-dawn eastern sky, hugging the horizon, dim yet detectable. Astronomers' initial action involves pinpointing its location, deriving its course, and verifying any alterations. Should the orbit match forecasts precisely, adhering to a gravity-only trajectory with the object in its expected position, no intervention transpired. It traversed perihelion, vented gases perhaps, and proceeded unbound. An atypical comet, yet organic. But if the orbit shifts, revealing even minor discrepancies, an event unfolded behind the Sun. Whether self-directed navigation, breakup, or another influence reshaped its path, the implications would loom large. Lowe pinpoints a precise observation interval from November 21st to December 5th, from a prior blog entry. The authors stress that their theory is the notion stands open to empirical disproof. Should 3 Atlas navigate our solar system absent any surprising path adjustments, especially across the span from November 21st through December 5th, 2025, then this concept would stand a strong chance of refutation. Spanning 2 weeks, that interval forms the pivotal phase for scrutiny. Any such alterations occurring at perihelion might reveal themselves through observable course shifts detectable come late November. Skywatchers remain vigilant, yet an additional dimension emerges here. Consider the idea of an advanced scout craft. Back in September, Lowe unveiled fresh computations. Suppose 3 Atlas dispatched a compact entity, a scout, at some prior juncture, and that this scout advanced ahead of the primary body by roughly 30 million kilometers. It might then have crossed paths with Mars earlier this week, on October 3rd, coinciding precisely with the planetary close encounter. The figures align neatly. Such a scout requires no vast dimensions, spanning just several meters, perhaps reaching 10 in width, akin to a standard vehicle. At that magnitude, mirroring solar rays from Mars's range, it would elude detection by ground telescopes on Earth. Spotting it proves impossible from here, yet its presence remains feasible. The high-resolution instrument aboard Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter goes beyond targeting the chief form alone. Per Lowe's proposal, it ought to survey the inbound pathway too, seeking out diminutive forms, forerunners, or reconnaissance units. Has NASA implemented such measures? Details escape public knowledge. While imaging schedules lack that granular disclosure, the option lingers. Should any unforeseen diminutive anomaly appear in the records, discourse would pivot abruptly. In contrast, the prevailing outlook, endorsed by the bulk of researchers, anticipates utter uneventfulness. 3 Atlas sweeps past perihelion, presses onward, and recedes into obscurity. An odd comet, intriguing and deserving examination, yet in essence merely one more wanderer from beyond our stars. Absent adjustments, absent scouts, absent divergences, such forms the standard forecast, and likelihood favors its accuracy. Still, the spatial arrangement unsettles, the chronology unsettles, that the peak intensity unfolds beyond our gaze, that unsettles profoundly. Fold in the cue ball notion, and unease deepens further. Since a CQ ball demands no drive systems, it executes no corrections. Motionless in essence, yet enormously hefty. 33 billion tons. Drawing near a world, it imposes tidal pulls. A world's path might nudge ever so slightly, yet trackably across durations. Mars draws particular worry. 3 Atlas glides by at 29 million kilometers this very day. Proximity defines it. Far from impact territory, but near sufficient for tidal effects to register. Should the body match the projected heft, Mars ought to register a faint gravitational nudge. Its orbital specifics, the exact metrics charting its solar circuit, might alter in measurable fashion. Celestial trackers monitor Mars without cease. Its locale registers with extraordinary exactitude. Should 3 Atlas deliver even a modest tidal disturbance, observers would note it, not at once, but across ensuing weeks and months as Mars pursues its loop, with discrepancies building steadily. That offers yet another trial, a fresh means to validate or dismiss the density projections, with outcomes emerging across the coming months. Thus, anticipation builds. October elapses, the body conceals itself, November dawns, monitoring recommences, and come December, clarity arrives. Did adjustments occur? Did the course alter? Does the density hold true? Revelations approach, preparedness aside. Chapter 8. The Decoy Scenario. Nested within this framework lies a sub-hypothesis, an inner conjecture, and it may rank as the most disquieting to date. Imagine 3 Atlas serving as mere diversion. The concept originated with Omar Dadi, a partner to Avi Loeb's. He posited that a sophisticated society could deploy a seemingly organic interstellar comet as bait, vivid and conspicuous, luring scopes and scrutiny. Meanwhile, the true endeavor unfolds in shadowed realms. Lowe explored this in an August blog entry. Quote, "My collaborator Omar Lediardi suggested that aliens might use a natural interstellar comet, as perhaps the interstellar visitor known as 3I Atlas serves as a diversion, drawing our gaze skyward while covert maneuvers unfold elsewhere in proximity to our planet. From this viewpoint, it merits examination to determine if unidentified anomalous phenomena exhibit heightened presence within Earth's skies following the object's nearest passage to the Sun on October 31, 2025. Heightened UAP occurrences coinciding with 3I Atlas's arrival at perihelion represent a hypothesis ripe for empirical scrutiny, and dedicated efforts are underway to probe it. The Galileo project, spearheaded by the Loeb Initiative, constitutes an astronomical endeavor aimed at uncovering signs of extraterrestrial engineering, not via radio waves or remote exoplanetary observations, but through vigilant scrutiny right here in our vicinity, deploying optical instruments and detection arrays to survey the heavens for irregular entities. This initiative operates 3 dedicated sites, one at the Harvard College Observatory in Massachusetts, another in Pennsylvania, and a third in Nevada. All are outfitted with imaging devices, thermal imaging units, radar systems, and sound capturing equipment. These setups methodically sweep the full celestial dome without interruption, documenting every transit across the firmament. Machine learning algorithms process the influx, sorting phenomena into categories. Avian creatures, commercial aircraft, orbiting satellites, unmanned aerial vehicles, shooting stars, nearly all prove ordinary and readily accounted for. Yet now and then, an anomaly emerges that defies categorization, something traversing at improbable velocities, lingering unduly, or altering course in manners beyond the capabilities of standard aviation. Such instances prompt deeper review, dissection, and pursuit. Launched in the final months of 2022, the Galileo project has amassed records on 500,000 atmospheric transients. Overwhelmingly, these yield straightforward identifications and rationales, revealing no curiosities, though the apparatus remains ever vigilant. As per Loeb, intensified surveillance will persist through October and November. In his words, "Gladly, the Galileo project will be monitoring the sky under my leadership with its 3 observatories in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Nevada during that period." Thus, should UAP incidents surge or peculiar manifestations infiltrate our aerial domain as 3I Atlas lingers solar obscured, the Galileo project stands ready to register them. A temporal linkage, should it materialize, would compel attention. To clarify, Loeb advances no forecast of extraterrestrial vessels materializing, nor does he assert 3I Atlas as an unequivocal ruse. Rather, he posits that under such a scenario, we ought to anticipate ancillary engagements for which his group is optimally arrayed. The ruse conjecture hinges on several premises. Primarily, that 3I Atlas qualifies as engineered or remotely guided. Next, that its intent veers from overt engagement toward preliminary assessment. Finally, that its originators or operators seek to misdirect human focus onto the conspicuous interloper, permitting subtler, more elusive endeavors nearer our sphere. What motive might propel a sophisticated society to employ such tactics? A prime consideration involves parity in knowledge acquisition. When evaluating a species prone to aggression or caprice, overt revelation risks peril. Instead, intelligence accrues surreptitiously. Deploy compact emissaries of minimal detectability and orchestrate diversions to anchor the subject's scrutiny afar. 3I Atlas blazes conspicuously, radiating intrigue and anomaly. It commands the scrutiny of terrestrial and spaceborne observatories alike, spawning scholarly treatises, fueling expert discourse, and captivating public broadcasts as a cosmic marvel. Amid this fixation on the inbound wanderer, what unfolds in our troposphere or low orbits? Might diminutive, unobtrusive artifacts execute maneuvers beyond our ken? The Galileo project's archives stand poised to illuminate, or at minimum to flag any escalation, a deviation in patterns and excess of unresolved sightings, concentrated in late October through early November. Should such a surge occur, it neither validates the ruse nor equates linkage with origin, yet dismissing it would prove challenging. An alternative perspective emerges in the notion of cloaked composite vessels, advanced by Gabor, an adherent to Loeb's scholarship. This concept suggests that a superior intellect might eschew fabricating vehicles from the ground up. Instead, they could repurpose indigenous cosmic resources, fragments of rock, icy nuclei. Transform celestial bodies by reshaping their surfaces, carving out their cores, fitting advanced equipment within, and leveraging their organic shells for concealment. In his online journal, Loeb cited So's words, "Societies on Earth are already devising expeditions to extract resources from asteroids, and for a far more sophisticated society, such an approach might prove remarkably simple. The rocky envelope of an asteroid delivers superb innate protection. The entity delivers built-in invisibility. Provided there are no emissions from operations or fabricated shiny exteriors, it presents to observers as merely an ordinary space rock. This addresses a key challenge. When dispatching an item to a distant stellar realm, protection becomes essential. Galactic radiation, intense subatomic projectiles, tiny meteor fragments. The void between stars proves unforgiving. Constructing robust barriers demands vast resources and adds immense weight, yet beginning with a boulder incorporates the armor from the outset. One merely tunnels through the inside, deploys the mechanisms, and proceeds. To external views, it resembles a comet. It releases vapors. It develops a hazy envelope. It acts in typical fashion, yet internally dwell devices, sensors, energy generators, perhaps even personnel in suspended animation, poised for activation. Such notions aren't recent inventions. Imaginative literature has explored this trope across generations. Arthur C. Clarke's Rendezvous with Rama depicts an enormous tubular vessel masked as a space rock. Greg Bear's Forge of God features duplicating apparatuses concealed in icy wanderers. The notion feels commonplace, yet it holds real utility. When traversing vast cosmic expanses, when enduring eons during the journey, employing raw substances proves logical and complicates identification, since stargazers presume stones remain stones. Absent blatant engineered actions, such items earn labels as organic. 3 Atlas has avoided any blatant engineered actions, absent transmissions, absent path adjustments, absent fabricated illuminations. It merely fails to align perfectly with observations. The composition deviates, the mechanics deviate, the path raises doubts, yet none constitutes evidence. Therein lies the genius of a covert fused architecture. It remains contestable, unclear. Confirmation of its crafted nature demands proximity, extreme proximity. And once a pursuit craft could be dispatched to encounter it, the target has vanished. Thus, uncertainties linger. Might the Galileo project detect oddities in the near future? Could sightings of unidentified aerial phenomena surge? Might entities emerge that defy categorization? And should that occur, would observers link them to 3I Atlas? Alternatively, could the autumn months slip by uneventfully? Absent irregularities, absent rises, merely a wanderer slipping sunward and resurfacing opposite. Peculiar indeed, but in the end, organic. Observations will settle the matter eventually. One must simply endure a bit longer. Chapter 9. The Silence Protocol. Among researchers, divisions deepen regarding this entity, not in public forums or formal declarations, but in subdued arenas, the digital correspondences, the sidelong chats at gatherings, the extended evening sessions in workspaces. 2 factions exist, and the rift expands. One faction insists 3 Atlas qualifies as a comet, atypical, certainly, stretching limits, but confined to ordinary cosmic events. The makeup admits interpretation via rare precursor compounds yet to be catalogued. Projections of its bulk could err. Superior information will illuminate. Patience alongside methodical inquiry will dispel the oddities. The opposing faction harbors greater doubt. They examine identical records. They perform parallel computations, yet they arrive at conclusions that clash, not merely peripherally, but fundamentally. The principles fail to hold without embracing assumptions that border on the implausible: enormous compactness, embedded power origins, contrived compositions. The disclosed forum message highlights this schism. Authorities maintain that 3 Atlas represents a distinctly vigorous, yet fundamentally ordinary comet. Such a stance grows unsustainable, and the muteness from superiors concerning the mental conflict this demands turns into a grave occupational concern for an expanding cohort of professionals. Mental conflict, that's a potent term. It describes maintaining conflicting researchers grapple with holding opposing convictions at once. Here, they trust the information's validity, yet insist the entity is ordinary, since accurate readings clash with a natural origin. Conversely, accepting its natural status implies the information is flawed. Yet, various separate groups have scrutinized the information numerous times, employing varied tools and techniques, only for results to consistently align. This dilemma strands scientists unable to harmonize the findings. The article indicates they're subtly dissuaded from exploring other possibilities. No outright bans or suppressions occur, just gentle discouragement. Career motivations steer toward standard interpretations. Submissions advancing unusual theories encounter tougher evaluations. Funding requests referencing concepts such as manufactured or unnatural draw doubt. Professional paths may stagnate. Such dynamics extend beyond 3I Atlas alone. They reflect a wider challenge across scientific fields, the compulsion to adhere to established paradigms, avoid disrupting norms, and temper assertions cautiously. Typically, this approach benefits the discipline. It shields robust research from being overwhelmed by fanciful conjectures, though at times it fosters oversights areas where evidence directs attention one direction while the collective gaze shifts elsewhere. Jason Wright, a Penn State astronomer, speaks out forcefully on these matters. He has faulted Avi's handling of 3I Atlas as well as his earlier take on Oumuamua. Wright contends that Lowe rushes to artificial interpretations, overlooks fundamental sightings, and attracts publicity for assertions that falter close examination. In a blog entry, Wright stated, quote, Avi has gained a reputation for suggesting and outright claiming things could be alien spacecraft, even when there's little to no objective reason to think so. It didn't take long before Avi claimed 3 Atlas was an alien spacecraft. He continues by dissecting particular assertions. For instance, the notion that telescope-detected elongated emissions stem merely from motion blur. Wright counters that contemporary instruments adjust for celestial shifts. They follow trajectories. They layer exposures. Blur poses no problem for expert facilities. When diverse autonomous sightings reveal an elongated emission, it qualifies as genuine. 3 Atlas exhibits a coma, confirming its comet nature. Yet Lowe's stance reveals greater subtlety than Wright's analysis implies. Lowe avoids declarations of absolute truth. Instead, he offers a spectrum, a model. The Loeb scale spans from 0 to 10, with 0 signifying purely natural and 10 purely artificial. He assigns 3I Atlas a score of 6. Far from conclusive or verified, this nonetheless justifies thorough probing. The scale proves compelling in its own right. It shifts discourse from yes or no debates. Rather than debating alien versus not, it probes degrees of irregularity. To what extent does it stray from norms, and at which irregularity threshold does it demand specific actions? Lowers advocated formal endorsement of this scale by a global entity, namely the United Nations. During October, a position paper emerged, penned by Omdir Gersian Tenenbaum and Avi Lowe, entitled Advancing Interstellar Science, a Global Framework for Comprehensive Study of Interstellar Objects. This document advocates forming UNSIO, the United Nations Committee on Interstellar Objects. The concept remains simple. Enhanced sensing technologies, especially as the Vera Rubin Observatory activates, will uncover additional interstellar visitors far more than before. Projections indicate detections roughly once every several months, potentially exceeding that. Every instance presents a brief window. These wanderers zip past swiftly. To examine them properly requires organized effort, global, swift, anticipated in advance. UNCCIO would unify procedures, define guidelines, build an interconnected array of viewing sites, assured slots for monitoring, sustain a squadron of quick-deploy probes poised for immediate dispatch, and vitally, integrate the Loeb scale into official categorization. Items scoring 4 or higher would prompt intensified scrutiny. A rating of 6 would, notification to the United Nations Security Council becomes mandatory. Any threat level reaching 8 or above triggers urgent response measures. At present, 3 Atlas holds a score of 6. Should it alter course, should gamma rays appear, or should its emissions persist regardless of proximity to the Sun, the assessment would climb, prompting a stepped-up global reaction in proportion. This initiative demands bold vision. It hinges on financial backing, diplomatic resolve, and joint efforts among cosmic exploration bodies. Such elements remain uncertain, yet the blueprint exists, bolstered by the backing of Representative Anapolina Aluna, a member of the U.S. Congress. Her endorsement appears referenced in the position document. The fate of UNCIO materializing rests on developments over the coming months. Should 3 Atlas simply drift away unobtrusively, the pressing need would wane. It would transform into a fascinating example for analysis, an odd celestial wanderer deserving of scholarly attention, yet far from a dire emergency. Should alterations occur, should the entity act in baffling manners, discussions would pivot, rendering global collaboration no longer an instance of excessive administration, but an essential step. Another factor influencing matters involves openness, or its absence. The message on 4chan alludes to confidential discussions kept from view, unreleased findings, and unvoiced irritations. Should this hold water, should discrepancies exist between private expert opinions and public declarations, such divides would narrow over time via unauthorized revelations or official unveilings. Scientific inquiry thrives on candor. Findings must circulate freely. Ideas for explanation demand open scrutiny. Evaluation by peers requires clarity. Once these falter, once knowledge gets compartmentalized or restricted, confidence wanes and conjecture rushes in to occupy the space. Presently, we occupy an odd interim state. Sufficient details circulate to spark inquiries, yet insufficient to settle them conclusively. Key sightings remain outstanding: visuals from the Mars pass, hunts for gamma emissions, path readings from December. Within this interval, observers remain vigilant, expectant. Certain ones peer through lenses, others craft notions, and a handful purportedly possess insights they ought not divulge. The forthcoming segment of this tale will not emerge from guesswork. It will arise from evidence, from sightings, from gauges that validate standard interpretations or compel exploration of other possibilities. Proximity draws near. Today's Mars encounter has passed. The closest solar approach spans 3 weeks ahead. The reappearance in December lies 2 months distant. As the year closes, greater clarity will emerge, perhaps not full comprehension, but advancement. Should irregularities endure, should evidence resist alignment, then whatever quieting strategy exists will falter. For in time, barriers erected against troubling inquiries begin to fracture, revealing the contours of the chamber, prepared or otherwise. Chapter 10. What follows? Mars-derived visuals ought to reach us in mere days, perhaps a week at most. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has relayed its payload to our planet. Specialists handle the refinement, adjustment, amplification. Before long, we will glimpse what HiRISE recorded amid the transit. Should the core appear distinctly, should it measure 5 kilometers or greater, the enigma deepens. Dismissing 33 billion tons grows more challenging. The improbability of detecting an entity so immense turns inescapable. Interstellar voids might teem more densely than anticipated, or this body stands unique in manners beyond our grasp. Should the core prove diminutive, below a kilometer, the puzzle evolves differently. For a tiny core, yielding such copious vapors, maintaining such luminosity at this remove, poses an altogether distinct challenge. It implies exceptional vigor, inherent warmth, some force propelling the outflows past mere solar influence. Each result provokes further doubts, none fully dispels them. Spectral insights from Mars Express and ExoMar Tracus Orbiter will contribute additional depth. Scientists are assessing the gaseous makeup from a nearer vantage point, employing tools tailored for probing atmospheres. Should they uncover substances undetectable via ground telescopes, should the chemical profile appear more peculiar at short range, such significance arises. Monitoring luminosity forms another key aspect. With 3I Atlas receding from Mars and advancing to perihelion, terrestrial watchers face a shrinking opportunity. Mid-October marks when the entity vanishes amid solar brightness. Prior to that, each evening's light measurements prove vital, as do all spectral readings and polarization assessments. Global crews gather information, store it systematically, and construct a chronological record. Upon the entity's December return, this record gains utmost importance. We shall juxtapose pre-perihelion actions against post-perihelion ones. Will the pattern of vigor align with forecasts, or will it diverge? Typical comets adhere to a power law pattern. Luminosity and gas release escalate proportionally to the inverse square of heliocentric distance, or even more sharply. Nearing the Sun, vigor intensifies. Withdrawing, it diminishes. This pattern holds reliably across the cosmos. Should 3I Atlas buck this trend, should its vigor persist elevated beyond 3 astronomical units or 4, alarms will sound. As noted before, the TUB forecast depends on precisely this. An inherent power origin ignores heliocentric separation. It remains steady. Such a notion invites refutation through observation. Clarity should emerge by January or February. Probing for gamma rays represents yet another investigative strand. Facilities such as Fermi and Integral sweep the heavens without pause. They capture energetic photons. Were 3I Atlas driven by an internuclear reaction, a breakdown yielding vigorous particles, these devices ought to register it. To date, no official disclosures indicate gamma ray output from 3I Atlas. This absence does not imply inaction in the hunts. Processing datasets demands patience. Emissions prove subtle. Ambient interference looms large. Spotting something may delay public reveal. Alternatively, it could lurk undetected in archives, awaiting scrutiny. Should gamma rays surface and align positionally with the comet and resist attribution to solar wind clashes or cosmic ray strikes, that shifts the paradigm. No ordinary comet generates gamma rays via core mechanisms. Solely cosmic powerhouses achieve that. Pulsars, magnetars, supernovae, or perhaps unconventional substances. Perturbations to Mars's path offer a more gradual indicator. Mars receives meticulous orbital surveillance. Its trajectory stands mapped to the meter. If 3I Atlas tugged gravitationally during the near encounter, Mars would veer faintly from its forecast route. The shift stays minor millimeters daily, yet accumulates over months. Come early 2026, any genuine offset ought to register. And should it conform to the anticipated nudge from a 33 billion-ton body that yields mass validation apart from any gas dynamics, relying purely on pull. Surveillance for UAP via Galileo project sites operates ongoing. Currently, inflows of data proceed. A surge in anomalous sky events timed to perihelion transit would register statistically. Increased sightings, odd paths, temporal groupings. Lacking such a surge fails to refute the decoy idea. It merely erases one evidentiary thread. Yet, a surge demands attention, particularly if irregularities cluster in late October through early November before fading. December 5th closes LOE's defined interval for spotting path alterations. Should 3I Atlas adjust course at perihelion, execute a reverse orbit to remain solar-bound, the offset should surface by that date. Sites will gauge the entity's locale, compute its trajectory against models. An unaltered, solely gravitational path signals no adjustment. The entity traversed perihelion conventionally. It departs. Regardless of its nature, it exits. An altered path, an evident offset that if anomalies like this can't be attributed to simple venting or breakup processes, then an event occurred on the far side of the sun, hidden from our view, and that requires accounting for. The Vera Rubin Observatory introduces one last complication. It started functioning this year. Comprehensive sky scans, profound photographs, automatic spotting, built to identify fleeting phenomena, shifting entities, space rocks, icy wanderers, and objects from beyond our system. Projections indicate the Rubin will spot one such outsider every few months, possibly even more often. In just a year or two, we'll gather dozens of them, turning each into a benchmark for analysis. Is 3IE Atlas exceptional, or does it belong to a broader group? Should upcoming interstellar arrivals display comparable oddities, immense density, bizarre composition, steady luminosity, then 3IE Atlas won't seem like a freak occurrence. Instead, it serves as an early indicator. An initial glimpse of a widespread galactic feature that we're only beginning to recognize. If those future finds turn out ordinary, modest in size, orderly, icy bodies, then 3IE Atlas remains isolated, a true oddity, heightening the enigma rather than diminishing it. The broader context boils down to this. We're standing at a pivotal moment. For the first time ever, we possess the equipment to examine these cosmic intruders thoroughly. Beyond mere discovery, we can probe them deeply. Spectral analysis, sharp detailed visuals, swift intervention efforts, global teamwork. 3IE Atlas acts as a rigorous trial. It's straining all our devices, theories, and preconceptions. Through this strain, it's exposing weaknesses, areas where our knowledge proves shallower than anticipated. Certain weaknesses will narrow. Enhanced information, polished hypotheses, overlooked rational interpretations. Science excels at unraveling puzzles. Not instantly, perhaps, but in due course. Some weaknesses may persist. They could expand into vast divides, shifting the discussion entirely from debating comet varieties to questioning the object's very nature. We haven't arrived there, but the brink feels near. The coming 3 months promise revelations, views from Mars, closest solar approach, hunts for gamma emissions, its return in December, path calculations, unidentified aerial phenomenon records. Every element contributes to the enigma or deepens its complexity. By March, as 3IE Atlas swings past Jupiter and the Juno probe captures its images, our view will sharpen considerably, though not fully resolved. And should the object continue eluding comprehension by then, holding a score of 6 or above on the anomaly index, the quiet agreement shatters. Inquiries grow overwhelming, evidence too insistent, forcing us to face the anonymous poster's claim. This isn't a flaw in our frameworks. It's a peek at whatever lies beneath them, an entity we never realized existed. Be it otherworldly, advanced celestial mechanics, shadowy substance, forgotten artifacts, or utterly novel discovery looms. The cosmos endures. It never hurries, yet it refuses concealment. If 3IE Atlas harbors a mystery, if mechanisms lurk below its exterior, revelations will emerge via the records, the sightings, the gradual buildup of proof that either validates or refutes. We need only observe patiently, prepared to pursue the evidence wherever it guides, even into uneasy territory, for that's the essence of inquiry. Not fixed solutions, but a refined way to pose sharper inquiries. And 3IE Atlas poses one of the sharpest in ages. What exactly are you? Thus, we conclude a tale still unfolding. October the 3rd, 2025. The Mars encounter unfolded mere hours back. Information flows in steadily, and buried within might lie a resolution, or at minimum, its dawn. Pause for a moment and reflect on our journey through the details. 3IE Atlas, a wanderer from interstellar space, our third verified one, yet distinct from the prior pair, this refuses conformity. It ejects a 150 kg per second without any backward thrust. It packs the heft of a minor satellite into a volume smaller than Manhattan. It emits nickel vapor at heats where nickel ought to. It remains encased in ice, utterly rigid. Within its spectral analysis emerges nickel tetracarbonyl, an artificial compound used in industry. The particles it releases exhibit polarization so intense that researchers suspected malfunctions in their equipment. Rotation is absent. Alternatively, should any occur, the luminosity remains constant. It captures gigawatts of sunlight yet maintains a frigid state. Moreover, its path, schedule, and orbital harmony with planetary positions all hover at odds that unsettle probability experts. Anomalies total 7, with 4 potentially accountable, while 3 persist relentlessly despite accumulating evidence. Beyond that lies the disclosure. An unidentified message from an individual purporting affiliation with the European Space Agency details a team effort that repeatedly faltered in aligning this entity with conventional celestial forms. It outlines compositions improbable for an ancient asteroid, particles resembling artificial constructs, an energy ledger that fails to equilibrate, plus a suppressed inference, one barred from open debate, suggesting perhaps this is no mere fragment. Enter the cue ball hypothesis, a vast quantum entity originating from the Big Bang, a pocket of altered physical laws cloaked in frost and grit, gradually eroding across eons. Inside pulses a self-sustaining mechanism, independent of stellar input, generating bizarre reactions as byproduct, venting them evenly and forcefully without overall propulsion. Though it evokes speculative tales, the disclosure claims this alone unifies every observation. The sole model transforming discord into unity, and one open to verification. It offers 2 forecasts, straightforward and refutable. Observe the entity departing our system. Sustained vigor, unaffected by separation, signals the initial clue. Direct a gamma-ray telescope toward it. A non-thermal elevated energy mark confirms the follow-up. Upcoming months will test both. Another element, the obscured interval. In 26 days, 3I Atlas vanishes sunward. Closest solar approach falls on October 29th. An ideal juncture for adjustment, assuming such feats are feasible. An optimal release point for instruments, if any deploy, all concealed from view. Visibility returns only in December, allowing path reassessment. Has alteration occurred? Any event transpired? Consider the diversion concept, layering further intrigue. Perhaps the comet serves as bait, flashy and conspicuous, diverting focus as true scouting unfolds nearer our world. The Galileo project monitors accordingly. 3 facilities sweep the heavens, seeking surges in anomalous events near perihelion. Presence there would reveal itself in records. Beneath this tension, experts divide subtly. No public rifts, no formal announcements, but in private exchanges. Certain voices uphold it as a comet, atypical yet organic. Others confront the figures and find no harmony. Per the disclosure, this mental strain now strains careers, while official reticence amplifies. One initiative surfaces. UNCIO, the United Nations Committee on Interstellar Objects, establishes global synergy. The Loeb scale becomes the standard gauge. Guidelines for swift action, surveillance arrays, and vessels primed for prompt dispatch await future arrivals, for another approaches inevitably. The Vera Rubin Observatory ensures as much. Interstellar intruders arrive one per several months, possibly oftener. Each presents a chance or alert. 3. IATLAS holds a 6 on the LOE scale presently, sufficient for thorough scrutiny, insufficient for crisis measures. Yet, should forecasts prove true, should gamma rays appear, should the path shift, should emissions endure, the score climbs, discourse intensifies, and revelation nears. Within the ensuing 3 months, perhaps earlier, incoming evidence will either affirm traditional views might push back, yet they could drive us to explore other possibilities. Snapshots from Mars ought to reveal the core, whether vast or tiny. Spectral analysis shall sharpen our grasp of its makeup. Orbital tracking come December will uncover any events occurring out of sight past the Sun. Probes for gamma rays could spot evidence or dismiss it entirely. The Galileo initiative might pick up a surge in unidentified aerial phenomena or come up empty. Come the vernal season, as 3 Atlas swings by Jupiter while Juno draws near for a detailed scan, a full array of findings will emerge, allowing us to declare assuredly the nature of this entity, or at minimum, rule out what it cannot be. The cosmos speaks plainly. It never conceals its mysteries indefinitely. Should 3 Atlas prove merely a comet, an odd variety yet born of nature, the evidence will align toward that conclusion. Oddities shall clarify, theories will adapt, and we shall proceed forward. Yet, should the facts continue to resist alignment, should each fresh sighting pile on more peculiarities, should the pattern of discrepancies endure and intensify, we must pursue the path it indicates, even should it unsettle us, even should it upend all our prior assumptions about wanderers in the void, for that embodies the essence of inquiry, not solace, not assurance, but reality, no matter how peculiar it reveals itself. My gratitude for your attention, for accompanying this tale amid its turns and probing inquiries. Should this have resonated with you, tap the approval icon. Join the channel if you haven't yet. Such support matters greatly. Down below, share your thoughts. Do you believe it's simply a comet, or lingers some element that defies explanation? What do you make of this sighting? This presentation serves for amusement and learning. Opinions shared, particularly on the 4chan leak and conjectural ideas, fail to reflect mainstream scholarly agreement. Rely on vetted publications and statements from space authorities for confirmed details. Till our next encounter, gaze upward persistently, for entities traverse the shadows beyond. And within mere months, insights into its identity will grow clearer. Rest well.